I'm not at my best right now.
Richard, I did want to ask
Yeah.
really quick. I haven't re-listened to Tuesday's episode, so if this was already discussed, it's I missed out. But did you cover the Cooper Flag thing, or was it gonna?
Yeah, I talked about
Dang it.
it. We can
Okay,
reiterate
maybe
those
very
things.
briefly because I
It
don't want
might
to
be
forget.
fun to talk a little bit about Pete Rose as well if we're doing low-hanging fruit and not mentally taxing discussions, which is what would be helpful for me right now. Uh, um, I'll just go video on here because I don't look that bad.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah. So you can add some more
yeah.
here as a Dallasite.
I didn't want to redo the whole thing because I'm sure people on this have already listened to it, so it's fine. I just hadn't re-listened, so I didn't know if you ever got to it or not. But um,
Well, I mean, there was a less than 2% chance that the
1.8.
lottery ball of the Dallas Mavericks would be chosen because the Mavs ended up being pretty mediocre. I guess they
Correct.
missed the playoffs, but they weren't tanking exactly, and they certainly weren't at the
Right.
bottom. And now
So
that's
the come
possible, of course, but in line with the whole story, it seems extremely implausible and suspicious. I would just say that.
Yeah. I'm of two minds. So the first mind is like this was obviously conspiracy. This was the payoff to the Mavericks for working with the league's biggest market.
Yeah.
If you don't remember, I don't know how closely you follow the NBA, but in the couple months before the Luka trade, the NBA was going through an existential crisis. They were talking about how their ratings were hemorrhaging. Regular season was down 30% even from last year. Like
Hmm.
the stats were terrible for the rating stats were terrible. Um, so the thinking was that Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, facilitated a trade or something happened behind the scenes that got Luka Doncic, the league's premier player, one of the league's two or three premier
Hmm.
players, into the largest market in the NBA, LA.
Hmm.
It's even bigger than the Knicks. It brings in more money than the Knicks.
Well,
Um,
what I've heard as well is that the LA Lakers are a bit like the Cowboys or the Los Angeles Dodgers, and there's some other where even if you don't live in that region, even if your dad didn't follow the team, you just sort of become a fan. And there are few teams that are like that. The Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox. That's about it in baseball.
Especially in the NBA. The NBA is
Yeah, I
much
don't think
less.
someone like if the Cubs, that's another one. Yes. Though four in Major League Baseball, I don't think anyone who like grows up in Oklahoma decides to be like a Cleveland Guardians fan or something, or like I'm going to adopt the Tampa Bay Rays as my uh special team. That I don't think that happens at
Some
all.
psychopath out there.
Yeah, but the Lakers are like that, and the Celtics might be.
Yeah, but that's more of a Homer thing, and
Hmm.
there's a racial element to all of this that I was going to get to. But
Yeah.
the Celtics thing is very implicitly racial, in my opinion. There's the Dallas racial angle is interesting, and that's what I was tweeting about a little bit. But so the first mind, this was obviously a conspiracy, done by the league, blah blah blah. I've also seen, and I'm kind of coming around to this take, that something that has a 1.8% chance of happening happens 1.8% of the time.
Yeah.
And, if you think that this was orchestrated, you would also have to say that Kyrie Irving tearing his ACL that led the Mavericks to being not just mediocre, but incredibly mediocre this
Yeah.
season after the Luka trade was orchestrated also, because that's what put the Mavericks in an even better position to get to, because it was going to be even worse odds to get that first pick had they done better. So I, I think it might be a little overstated the extent to which this was orchestrated by the league. It's definitely, you can't ignore
Could have
those
been orchestrated at the
accusations.
last minute. I mean, it is true. Like, if you imagine this, if you get onto a commercial airline and they say there's only a 1.8% chance that this plane will crash, um, it's like there's a 98.2% chance that you're going to be almost 100%. You still wouldn't get on the airplane because,
No.
if you fly it enough times, it's going to happen, and it might happen the first time you fly it. So I mean, it is something to think about. But I a couple of things, the background information that you mentioned, which is that the NBA is going through a bit of a crisis. I mean, football seems to just dominate the mind space for all sports. And the NBA doesn't quite know who it is. Is LeBron a superstar? Is he too old? Was he ever iconic in the way that Michael Jordan or
Kobe
Larry Bird,
Bryant.
yeah, or even Kobe Bryant, or and so I think they were going through that. And I don't know. The two conspiracy theories that I heard, which both struck me as plausible, was that first off, the Adelsons are almost like tearing things down viciously, nihilistically, that they're basically saying they want gambling to be legal in Texas. So it's like, this is a nice looking team you got here. Shame if something would happen to it. They're like willing to destroy the Mavericks um, in order
Yeah.
to kind of force the hand. So we want a stadium where within a casino, basically. There's going to be a basketball court in a casino.
So
And,
you're
yeah,
familiar with the layout of Dallas, obviously, right?
yeah, yeah,
So you know where Texas Stadium used to be located, right?
yeah, definitely.
That whole, and you might have seen it since your visits back there,
Oh,
but that whole
I've been to Texas Stadium. I think they tore it down when in the early
2011,
2000s or something.
2011.
Yeah, 2011. Okay, later than I thought.
Um,
Yeah.
so that whole area is what is being heavily hypothesized will be the area of the new casino and new arena once the
Hmm.
Mavericks lease of American Airlines Center expires in 2029. So that is likely going to be the area. Irving, Texas has gone through in the past 6 months a lot of tumult
Hmm.
about local congressmen getting paid off by the Sands Corporation, which is the
Wow.
Adelson's gambling LLC. They're paying, and this isn't really that conspiratorial when you look at where their money is coming from and the about face that they've done on gambling and rezoning a lot of these residential areas to be possible gaming zones. So Irving is being heavily infiltrated by Adelson money, and it's like, do these people's tentacles know no bounds? It's like Irving, Texas, is where their money is now. Like, and it makes sense. Like they came from Vegas to Dallas to become like a gambling magnet in Dallas. Like,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's one huge angle is the Adelsons and kind of putting a gun to the head of one of Dallas's most prosperous sports teams to say, hey, if you don't do what we want, we'll trade your superstar. That is one theory
That
that
is one theory. The other theory is that it was a league because remember, any sports league is a conspiracy, and in effect has a monopoly. I mean, there's the baseball literally has an exemption to the monopoly law. Like, there's no other baseball league.
wow.
It's the national pastime. Yeah, act by Congress,
Oh,
which
I didn't know that.
also played into the fact that Congress was investigating baseball for steroids because there was no rule against steroids in baseball until the 2000s. And so a lot of people would say, like, oh, what are you doing investigating this? This is none of your business. But it kind of was their business because it's bequeathed this power by the government, actually. But um,
Wow.
anyway, and I do want to get to Pete Rose because this is all connected. So there's the league is a conspiracy, and they're worried about their future, so they want to put Luka on the biggest team in the world. And also, interestingly, sort of flip the racial dynamics of the LA Lakers Boston Celtics rivalry of the past. Because, Red Auerbach, who I guess was the GM of the Celtics, when he was a coach in the 60s, he was unpopular in Boston because Boston is
Right.
notoriously racist
Right.
for Bill Russell and other black players.
Sam Jones, Bill Russell,
Yeah.
the
And they
Celtics
had
were
a
like,
lot of white players too, like Sam
oh yeah,
Havlicek, et cetera.
sure.
But it seemed like in the 80s where you had Bill Walton, Danny Ainge, Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, and some like a majority white team with some good black players like Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson.
Mhm.
But it was hard to miss.
Mhm.
And what was going on there? I mean, some have said like white players were undervalued by the 1980s, and so Outred was able to sort of find his
Well, it's like
angle.
what you were saying about the Patriots a couple shows ago about how
Right.
white players were undervalued. So they
White
picked
wide
them up.
receivers clearly undervalued. You can pay them.
Right.
It's a salary cap league, and you can pay them less. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So I don't know the answer to it, but there might have just been a Red Auerbach cowing to the Boston fans, and they just have this like slow white team.
It's just the idea, and this is kind of my honest take, is that the odds of the most consequential, shocking trade in NBA history, because that's what the Luka Doncic trade is. It's the most shocking trade in NBA history, that you would trade a 26-year-old white superstar in Dallas, Texas, who got the torch passed to him from Dirk Nowitzki, who was the other best white superstar of all time before or after Larry Bird. And then after that unprecedented thing happens, they get another unprecedented thing that happens where they also land not only the 1.8% chance of them getting the first pick. The Mavericks have never won the lottery before, ever.
That's interesting.
It's never happened. The Mavericks have never gotten the first pick. I've been watching the Mavericks since I was 7. The first season I watched was 2001. And it's unprecedented that the Mavs get a first round pick. The Mavs are notorious for drafting, like you said, undervalued, not necessarily white guys, but undervalued players in general in the second round that become good. And for this to happen, I was like the odds are that's too crazy. Kind of something had to have happened there. I'm all for just like not being a conspiratard, but like at a certain point, it's like too many.
Well, the
weird
reason
things
why
happen.
I'm a conspiratard about this is that the league is in itself a conspiracy.
Right.
And the league acts on its own behalf. There's revenue sharing. They're going to do what's best for the league. Secondly, we didn't see those ping pong balls. Like I remember back in the day in like the 90s, they would just it would be an actual lottery, like the Powerball 9,000 or whatever. They'd pick a ball out and it would have the logo on it. And it's all done behind the scenes. I don't know.
Right.
It's pretty remarkable. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of like the quiz show scandal from I guess the early 60s. I mean, there's a really good movie with Ralph Fiennes called Quiz Show. And they actually had this man who was like Dutch, forgetting was it Van Buren or something like that? He was from an academic family.
Yeah, that was Mark. It was Charles Van Doren. He was the son of Mark Van Doren. Mark Van Doren was a professor at Columbia.
Yes, and it's a WASP aristocracy, Dutch even aristocracy, and he was being fed answers on a television program to the quiz show, and he would make a big show about it. Because quiz show, you're like in a telephone booth, and they would say, like, please name, at least 5 wives of Henry VIII, and he'd be like, oh, this begins with an A, Anne Boleyn, and he's like, like sweats pouring down. He was like, oh, Jane, I'm searching Jane Seymour, yes. He was like thinking on the spot. He was, and this became a sensation in America. And big time Gem and quiz show. Yeah, I have no doubt about it. I don't know if you've seen it recently, but the investigator's Jewish, and it's very subtle that the investigator is Jewish. He indicates it in a casual line. And then the person who's suing Quiz Show is Jewish, and they're kind of taking down the WASP. And I remember even at the end, Congress just gives the WASP the benefit of the doubt. So Ray Fiennes like apologizes. He admits his guilt and apologizes. And Congress is like, you're such a great guy. Like, we're not mad at you. Like even after cheating, he is still like considered wonderful. But anyway, very good movie and fascinating thing. But I mean, I wasn't alive at the time, but it was a sort of loss of innocence. Quiz shows were huge. There were 3 channels or 4 channels, I guess, with PBS. Everyone was watching this, eating a TV dinner, sitting in their living room at 7 p.m. And
that really lasted through Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, really.
Yeah. That was maybe I don't know. I guess maybe these talent shows are popular,
and there was somebody who cheated on the millionaire version of In the London in England. There was I don't know if you've seen this, but same thing with that show.
Yeah, but I think there was more of a loss of innocence, and there was more like embedded tensions within the quiz show thing. And it's fascinating. This is an aside, but there's a great 1950s game show called To Tell the Truth. And they have a panel, and it's a bit like a court of law. Like someone mentioned quiz shows directed by Robert Redford, which is pretty interesting. Robert Redford of a younger age would have starred in that film, no doubt. But what was I saying? To Tell the Truth. So you have like a panel of guests, and they're all sort of sauced up actresses. Like I've seen some of those with Johnny Carson, like as a young comedian, or Ronald Reagan, and some of these other people who are like Broadway actresses who are kind of forgotten. They're all just sort of friendly. But it's a bit like a deposition, I guess. So there are 3 people who come out there to tell the truth. And, like one I saw is, my father was Wyatt Earp or something.
This was the intro of the Leonardo DiCaprio
Catch Me If You Can.
Catch Me If You Can. This was the literal intro of that.
Yes, and it was an actual show. And I think maybe even Spielberg was getting at what I'm indicating is that it's funny because there's something, I would have deep nostalgia for those shows, even though I wasn't alive. It's like, it's a different America. It's this white America. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's like having fun together. The entire country is watching this sort of ridiculous show together and guessing. And it's very nostalgia inducing in that regard. But it also shows like a sort of paranoia and darkness to the 1950s, because whenever I watched that, I had this sort of sense in my mind, like it's about finding the communist, or finding the subversive, or finding the leftist, or maybe even finding the Jew, you could say. And by the way, I think Catch Me If You Can is 100% allegory of Jews. Just to give away my reading of it. But Anyway, how did I get on this?
About
The
the league
cheating.
being rigged and a dip. You said the quote unquote conspiratard mind in you does believe in conspiracies with sports leagues because their whole
The whole
existence
thing's a
is
fucking conspiracy.
conspiratorial. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And
yeah.
I'm, do these leagues have a bit of the thumb on the scale, in certain ways? I mean, a lot of people accused the league of having a thumb on the scale with the Patriots and then being anti-Patriots at one
Right.
point, suspending Tom Brady for 5 games for deflating a football. I mean, give me a break.
There's a MAGA analogy here. I've heard this, and I almost hate to admit this because this is like, I do listen to sports ball content. Okay, I listen to Mavericks podcasts, but the guy who hosts the podcast who I listen to, it's like MAGA. When the guy came on the podcast the next day after the lottery happened, he said, yeah, everybody's saying it's rigged, but I don't care because it's rigged for us this time. And it's like, that's how MAGA feels. Exactly like that. Rig it for us for once. And that's the general, I would say, sentiment in Dallas, just from talking to people at the bar or at the Tex-Mex bar that I go to. When you talk to them about the lottery, they say things like, yeah, it was rigged, but who cares? They rig against us all the time. Don't care. Didn't ask. You know what I mean?
They felt blindsided and betrayed, and the trade was just totally inexplicable. The Luka trade. Just no one could understand trading a young athlete for an aging big man, basically.
An aging perma injured big man.
Yeah.
Like the guy's always injured, so it made no sense. It was there are direct parallels between that and the 2020 election. They felt screwed. They felt like we loved this team. We invested our money, our time into this team. I felt this way. I've been watching them since I was 6 or 7, and I was like, I'm done. I'm fucking done. I don't want to watch anymore. Well,
yeah, I would be too. If your team just gives up, that's when you're just demoralized.
Like, people. Well, what I heard from New York Knicks fans was, it's not the name on the back of the jersey; it's the name on the front of the jersey. And I said, yeah, that's all cute, but it's different when you just made the finals last year. It's different because we had just made the top level, the highest level you can get, and then we decided to go back to level 1. It's like, it's different, actually. It's not just, oh, well, teams do stupid stuff. This was unconscionable, actually. So that's the difference, I would say, in the Luka trade.
Yeah.
And just your team making a bad move. It's like,
well, the other thing is just, and I'll go to some hands here. And then I do want to actually talk about Pete Rose with Sports Talk Live. It's Boston Sports Talk Live. It's what I'm turning the Substack program into. Boston teams. But we shouldn't ascribe to malice or conspiracy what can be easily explained by incompetence.
That's what I was trying to say.
The Nico guy might very well have just done the stupidest fucking thing imaginable and not fully calculated the consequences, and then he just pulls a rabbit out of the hat at the last moment. Is like, oh, look at this, another white guy. Like the Cooper Flagg.
Well, that's the only thing I wanted to add before.
That is possible. Yeah.
That's the only thing I wanted to add, because I don't have much to offer in the way of baseball. But the only thing I wanted to add is kind of the racial element to this, because you can't look at this without the racial element, in my opinion. I don't think really anything escapes race. You almost cannot overlook the fact that Luka got the torch passed to him from Dirk, who was the other white superstar. And now, after we make a monumental mistake and trade Luka, we get a new white superstar. And it actually ties into something larger with the city of Dallas. I think, and I think you like this tweet. Dallas is a fundamentally white city, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sure, you have black people here. It's sure the 10 to 20% contingent. I'm one of that 10 to 20%. But but
It's a white
but
city. I
it
agree.
is a this is a
And
white
it's
city.
not like San Antonio. It's not like El
No,
Paso.
it is
It's a
not.
white
And it's not
guy
like
city.
Houston.
Yeah.
This is a white
Yeah.
people go out for margaritas and go shopping at North Park, and
Yes.
they drive 30 minutes to their suburb in Frisco after they go to North Park and shop at Louis Vuitton. That is
Yes.
the kind of city Dallas is. It is not a walkable city. It is heavily dependent on
Becoming a city.
driving. Yeah, yeah.
The Dallas City Council is like embracing new urbanism. I saw.
Yeah, but only because they're like excluding the blacks, which is good. I'm not saying that in a negative way. They're
Yeah.
excluding the blacks from areas like Deep Ellum and are building like
Oh, interesting.
expensive apartments there. So like when you
Interesting.
go onto like black social media in Dallas, they say Deep Ellum used to be historical, and the white people are like, what does that mean?
Deep
Gunshots on
Ellum
Malcolm
used to
X
be
Boulevard?
white. Deep Ellum was
Yeah, if
like
you go back
edgy
further, yeah,
hipster
yeah.
LSD users.
So you cannot ignore the extent to which Dallas is a white city. And not only that, when you dig into the superstars in like, because sports is supposed to be the one thing that transcends race, right? Like you talk
Hmm.
about with Jackie Robinson, that's like the perfect example.
Yeah.
Dallas loves its white superstars. They Troy Aikman, Tom Landry, Jerry Jones, Dirk Nowitzki,
Nolan
Tony
Ryan.
Romo,
Yeah.
who? Yeah, Dirk
Nolan Ryan
Nowitzki,
in the 90s.
Nolan
That was
Ryan,
actually a huge deal. Yeah.
Nolan Ryan, Dirk Nowitzki, Luka Doncic, and now
Yeah.
Cooper Flagg. And it's like, yeah, Dallas is getting its third white basketball king. Yeah, like get mad about it. It's awesome, actually. It's actually
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. No, it's
Anyway, that
pretty
was all I
funny.
wanted to say. I just wanted to touch base with you on that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we talked about it. It was more lively, this discussion than last time. I felt like I was the only one interested. It's good to have other people, you know.
Well, Dallasites.
Yeah, yeah, and I am one at heart. I'll be in Dallas and Austin in July.
Yeah, the meetup.
Yes, definitely, and I'll
Nice.
be in Dallas before then, actually. So
Okay.
I'll hit you up and
Heck
I'll
yeah.
buy you some Tex-Mex. And
Oh
Uncle
man.
Julio's. Is Uncle Julio's still a big place? That was
Uncle Julio's is still there, but if you really want the go to it's Miko Sina, man.
okay.
Miko Sina, that's the place.
You
that's
know,
just my
I even when I was there a year and a half ago, I actually ate at the original El Phoenix
oh,
in
the one off of
downtown
I
Dallas.
35, right by Clyde Warren Park.
Exactly. And a little bit disappointing. It wasn't super great,
No.
but
Miko Sina is upscale Tex Mex. You will
yeah.
feel like you're at a nice, not like you're about to see a cowboy Mexican shootout. Like go to Miko Sina, I promise.
Yes. I do miss this stuff. When I was in high school, Uncle Julio's is my favorite. I went there many times with my parents and after school or a ball game or something. And yeah, but I don't know. Things change. It's you gotta sometimes to keep a restaurant at high quality is difficult. But
Absolutely.
um, regular guy.
So you talk about sports being rigged or one of the easiest things to rig. I don't follow sports, but you might have mentioned this earlier because I came a bit late. The whole Chicago Cubs prediction from Back to the Future of 2015, and then it was up on Parks and Rec that they would win in 2016. Isn't
Really?
that? Yeah.
I didn't
mean,
even know about that.
It up to sort of verify this because I wasn't sure if it was true.
Oh, you're breaking up there, regular guy. And then Back to the Future.
You're roboting, Richard.
Am I
Yeah.
roboting? Okay, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna switch over to another Wi-Fi. Just one second. So am I still roboting? Do you guys hear me now? Is this doing fine?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, Parks and Rec predicted they'd win in 2016, which they did, and then you've Back to the Future 2015, and they actually won in 2016. Isn't that kind of like the smoking gun of that the whole thing was set up for them? I mean, I am not like I don't believe we live in a server where one person or a handful controls everything. I actually believe in almost no conspiracy theories personally, and I just find that, I mean, coincidences happen, but it's almost like they wanted to live up to like two media tropes. The big one being Back to the Future.
Yeah, so was that in like one of Buck's or whatever his name is in his sports book or something?
Well, when they go to 2015,
yeah,
it's revealed that the Chicago Cubs won, and that's kind of a joke because they haven't really won for a while.
Terrible, yeah.
And it just like, I don't know, coincidences happen, but isn't that kind of the most damning thing?
Well, what are you implying though? I mean, I almost don't believe this is firm evidence at all. I think sometimes you can just randomly say a joke and it turns out. But like, why? What would be their interest? That someone knew about it or something and dropped it in the script as predictive programming or something? I'm not sure I buy that.
No. I mean, I guess maybe like a couple years before, like the year was coming up, they said, okay, we're going to make sure they win this like a couple years before to attract interest in them or to throw the team a bone as part of favoritism. It wasn't like 40 years ago they said we're going to have them win because, and predictive programming, I guess maybe it was a trope in the movie, and like later they said, yeah, let's 2015's in a couple years, maybe let's make this real to like attract interest.
But more interest than would already be there with the Cubs winning the World Series? I mean,
yeah, because it lives up to the trope. It lives up to a movie made long before that.
No, I believe in conspiracies with sports, but I don't believe in this. I don't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fully. It's not fully baked. I mean, I think there was